Hello, everyone. This is Dino. So today I'm going to record this part 2 of chapter 4 of personal liability insurance. And before we get started, if you haven't subscribed, please click on subscribe so more people can access this video. Thank you so much. All right. So we're going to continue our lecture. I think I did it yesterday, part 1. So there are 2 damages they're talking about for your CABE exam. One is called the special damages, and the other one is called the general damages. So you need to know the definition of what is a special damage and what it includes. So when you say damage, I don't know why they call this damage. This is actually the payments, payments for special damages. It should have been named like that. And when you say special damage, you may wonder, well, somebody got a special damage? What does it mean, special damage, right? Or general damage? These are payments or reimbursement for special damages. So what are some of the special damages? The easiest way to remember this is these are some small expenses, okay? Not like huge expenses, okay? So these are like first aid. Somebody was just hurt. Immediately, you took him to an emergency room and you had to give him some treatment there. Short or long-term medical expenses. Usually many books, they only say short-term medical expenses because the long-term will come under general damages, okay? But in CABE, the resource that I got from a friend of mine, this is from a CABE book itself, they say short or long-term medical expenses, but these are minor expenses, okay? That's the important point. Loss of past earning capacity, maybe some income replacement, loss of future earning capacity, transportation costs, domestic modifications because the customer has to he's not able to do the work that he was doing before. There could be a vocational training or domestic modifications like a wheelchair access, those kind of things. Okay. Now, in other words, we're not talking like millions of dollars here. Think of it that way. Okay. Special damages. Think of them like a small damages. Okay. Now, when I go to the general damage, you will see the difference, what I'm talking about. The general damages, if you want to get a pen and a piece of paper, they're also known by 3 other names. You could get tripped up with that. Okay, so if you want to write this down, okay. So the general damage is also known as pain and suffering. Okay, you may have seen this in automobile and other policies, pain and suffering, and also known as non-economic losses, non-economic. I'm going to explain in a moment, okay? On the 4th name they have, our industry is so funny. They just try to play around with this, so many different names for the same coverage. The 4th name is non-pecuniary, okay? Non-pecuniary, let me just write that down to spell it properly. P-E-C-U-N-I-A-R-Y, pecuniary. Okay, so the economic and pecuniary, they have the connotation to money, okay? So non-economic means this damage doesn't talk about money. Oh, really? We're not talking about money? Then what are we talking about? Like barter system? Okay, what is it going on here? So non-pecuniary is like a non-monetary value. Okay, so what is this general damage, first of all, and why I'm showing you this picture? A very active person after a car accident reduced to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. So this person, there was a family in Mississauga, and so the husband was an airplane pilot, and he was a soccer coach on the weekends. Very vibrant family. Okay, so what happened? He was broadsided one day by a drunk driver, and then he ended up in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. He was only in his 40s. Now, when you look at that situation, he sustained a lot of injuries. One of them was the spinal cord. So he's going to be permanently disabled. Can you imagine the amount of pain and suffering he's going through? Not just physical pain, but mental pain. His relationship with his friends, his family, his relatives, and everything. He's now withdrawn by himself, okay, he's not even socializing and anything, he's so devastated, can you put a dollar amount to this type of injury? Can we say that, okay, just give him like $2 million, he should be okay? No, you can't, because the driver, the drunk driver, he just took away his life. There is no way you can put a dollar figure on this type of injury. See, now this makes sense when they call this as non-pecuniary, that's non-monetary. That means you cannot quantify this in dollar terms, or non-economic. So whenever you hear the word economic, we're talking about economy, the dollars and cents, okay? That's what it means. So non-economic is that not that it doesn't have anything to do with money, but no matter how much money you're going to give this person to this family, it'll never be the same again. That's what it means, okay? So we call them as general damages here for CAPE purposes. General damage is used in many books, many CAP books, they use the same name, but they also use the three other names. Just in case you come across the other names, pain and suffering, non-pecuniary, non-economic, you will remember that they're talking about catastrophic injury sustained by this person. So they compensate the victim for non-economic, hard to quantify. See, hard to quantify. You cannot put a dollar value on the effects of this injury. Okay, so then what are the 6 most common liability exposures to most people? How you can get into legal trouble? They list here 6 different things. Ownership of either a building or a piece of land, any kind of property. Okay, and we're going to see why the ownership of a property is becoming a liability issue. So what's a liability issue? What is the liability exposure? I mean, I know we said that before. I just want to reiterate. The liability that the person, your customer or yourself, you are getting into trouble, okay, with others, with third parties, by causing them either bodily injury or property damage. Either of them. They say these 2 things. Either you caused, because of your negligence, you caused bodily injury or property damage to others, which are called third party, and now they sue you for compensation. And so your policy, even if you have a tenant's policy or a condo policy or a home policy, an automobile policy, they all have like at least 1 million liability coverage in Ontario, 1 million. Okay, so it'll respond when your customer gets sued because of that. Now, the 6th item they're mentioning here, this could be the cause of how you cause the damage to other people. Like because of you're an occupier of a building or a land, a piece of land or a building. I'll get to that in a moment, okay? In the next slides, it actually tells you how different types of people can come into your building and they could be hurt because of your negligence as the owner or the occupier of the building, how you can get sued. That's what the title is. What are the 6 most common liability exposures? That means you are exposed to these troubles, okay? To most people. First is the occupier. Second one is the keeping of domestic animals. I remember talking about strict liability. Just yesterday, I was recording the part 1, and I was talking about in Hollywood, this guy had this exotic place where he was raising these very wild animals, and then, there was an accident happen. Yeah, that's a strict liability. And children, I will get to that. Okay, you may wonder what is it about children? Okay, so we'll get to that. Landlords of apartments and rented dwellings, if they don't maintain the building, people could come and they slip and fall, or they trip and fall, whatever it is, and they can sue the landlord. And then joint liability, and then independent contractors. So let me just go through one by one, okay? When you are an occupier of a piece of land or a home, a building, then you may have to deal with trespassers. Okay, some people they may trespass your land. Okay, so I don't want to get too deep into this, but when we teach the C13 liability course, we go through much more in depth about the trespassers. So what did say the law? Even with the trespasser, there is a way you have to deal with them. You cannot just, for example, set a trap and let the trespasser just fall into the trap and make him hurt himself. No, you owe a duty even to a trespasser, and if you don't, then you will get into trouble. You will be exposed to liability issue even because of a trespasser. Now, I'll give you an example. The trespassers could be different type of trespassing. Trespassing, what is trespassing? It's a wrongful entry upon the lands of another, okay? Even though there's a sign, no trespassing, but still some people. So see the difference. Was it trespassing like some school kids? They were dropped off by the bus on the other side because their home is on the other side of your land. And you're sitting here, in your easy chair and looking at the children. The children have to walk all the way across your land to get to their place. So they are just crossing through your land. They are trespassers by definition. So what are you going to do? You're going to hurt them? You're going to set a trap for them? You do have a duty of care. Even though it's a very minimum basic duty of care, you have to exercise the duty of care. Otherwise, you will get into legal trouble. Okay. Or I'll give you another example of another trespasser. There's somebody in the middle of the night. They came into your house with a gun. So they are trespassing your property, and they want to steal some stuff. And then you try to defend yourself and you hurt them. Is there something wrong with that? No, there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally legit. It's a self-defense. Okay, but then go back to the children passing through your land. They're also trespassers. So you don't hurt them. Okay, trying to teach a lesson for them. Maybe go and talk to their parents or something. And what's the big deal? They just cross through your land. Okay, that's why you can get into trouble if you go out of control. If you're an occupier, okay, even to trespassers, you owe duty of care. So now another type of people will come into your property, whether it's a building or your land or whatever it is, called licensee. Who is a licensee? So this person enters the land with the consent of the occupier. Like, for example, someone is attending a concert and you own the building, the concert hall. So they bought a ticket from you. And so they are inside. I mean, some damages could happen. If there's a concert, they get excited, whatever it is. But then they have your consent. They bought a ticket. So you have to take utmost care during the concert. You have to make sure that, if it's a winter time, then, you have to clean the snow and salt the place and keep everything clean. And there'll be a lot of traffic coming in, hundreds of people coming in to watch the concert. You need to make sure that everything, the walkway is clear and all of that. You have a duty of care. And if you don't, and if they get hurt, and let's say you have a ripped carpet or some wires running here and there, you set the speaker system, you didn't hide the wires or something, and some visitors, concert goers, they came and they fell and they hurt themselves, they're going to sue you. Okay, so you see the exposure here of a licensee. You have a higher duty of care. Why? Because you're making money. Okay, it's the responsibility of the occupier to ensure that the premises are safe. Another type of visitor then can come to your building is called an invitee. Invitee is someone who enters your premises with the consent of the occupier, but then the occupier has some financial or other material interest in the matter. It's very similar to the licensee. They're also I'll give you another example of the licensee, which will make a difference between the licensee and invitee. Let's say a hydro technician. Okay, a hydro technician, he comes to read the meter. Okay, so although you didn't, there's no financial interest, but he is there on a legitimate purpose on your land. So let's say your meter's at the back of the house. So he has to go to the back, and then the wintertime, you have to make sure that you have cleared the way for him to go, right? And if you have a dog, you should restrain your dog. You shouldn't go after this person. And if you don't do those things, and if he's hurt, he's going to sue you because he has some kind of concern because, you're using the hydro and he works for the hydro company. Okay. Now the invitee, you directly have a financial, let's say somebody comes to the Apple store. So if you own the Apple store, then you are an occupier of the Apple store because you are the owner of the Apple store, and people come to purchase stuff. So you have a monetary value there in their visit. Occupier has some financial other material interest in the matter. So you have the greatest duty of care to the invitee. They come there to spend money. okay? And you're making a profit there. You're making a living out of this. So when they come into your store, you have to make sure everything is neat and tidy and not, wires are running all over the place and everything, okay? So you need to keep your store clean so people don't get hurt. And if they do get hurt, they're going to go after you with a lawsuit. You see now, you may wonder what's the occupier's duty of care and the liability exposure. Now you can see when you own a building or piece of land, you could get into trouble if you don't take care of it. Okay. All right. So what about the children? How you can be exposed to trouble, legal trouble because of children? I'll give an example. In my area, it's kind of a new area. There's a lot of new families are moving in here. And many of them, they don't have fence because it takes almost 3 years to get the permit from the city to put up a fence because it's a brand new area. There was no homes built here before. It's the Niagara Escarpment where I live here. And so we also took 3 years before the Hamilton city can give it the thing. So what many families are doing in the summertime, they're putting up their trampoline. So the backyard is open and there's nobody supervising. So the children come from school at 3 o'clock or something, and then it's an attractive nuisance. Okay. So they could get hurt playing on your trampoline in your backyard, which doesn't have a fence and nobody's watching them. It'll be your fault. Okay. And you can't say, oh, the children that trespass my land, they're not supposed to be here. Don't tell me that. That's what the judge is going to say. These are children and you are an adult. You should know that these children, these are attractive nuisance for them. They will come and they play on that. Okay. So if they get hurt, you can be sued because of that. Okay. That's why the child trespassers are protected by the notion of attractive nuisance. So the trampoline is an attractive nuisance. A swimming pool, same thing. It's an attractive nuisance. If you have a swimming pool or trampoline and you guard it so the children cannot enter it, if they enter with your permission, then someone should be there to watch over them. Otherwise, don't allow them. You're just taking on too much trouble, right? So property or premises that would tempt the children to trespass. So you see how, because of children, you could get into legal trouble if you don't protect what you have. Occupiers must take greater care to safeguard them. So the duty to the child trespasser was raised to that of the licensee. So it's as if they have a consent from you. Like, I told you that the hydro person coming to your land and checking the meter. So they have your consent, implied consent, because you use the hydro. The children will be considered that, like that, as if they have consent because you just kept it open, kept your backyard open, right? All right. So how about parents? Can they get into trouble because they're children? Yes and no. Okay. See here, we are starting off like saying parents are not generally responsible for the negligence of their children, but they could be responsible under some circumstances. So for the exam, they give you 3 things you want to remember. Okay. So the child was acting on parents' express instructions or under their authority. Either you have, some kind of work you gave them and you gave them specific responsibility to do that. And you warned them that I don't want you to do this any other style. I want you to do like this. Okay. You gave them some kind of work and you gave them express instruction to do this. Okay. And so something went wrong and they hurt somebody. Somebody was hurt when they were doing this job. Okay. Specifically expressed with this express instruction from you as a parent. Then yes, you will be responsible for any kind of damage. The second one, the child was employed by the parent and acting within the scope of the employment. So you're running a business and then you employed your child, okay? And then you giving him specific instruction again, how to do certain things. He's moving some boxes or something within, you asked him to do in a certain way. You stack them up in the corner of the building or whatever it is. He's making some extra money from you. But the important point is he's taking instruction from you what to do. And then something went wrong. Okay. And then during his work, he hurt somebody. You can be in trouble. Okay. So this is also known as the vicarious liability. Vicarious means that because of someone else, you could be responsible for it because the other someone else is working under your supervision. Okay, you're telling them what to do. The third one is damage was caused by a dangerous thing or an animal which parents allowed the child to control. Like, for example, the parents allowed the son or daughter to drive a car and an accident occurred. So you gave them the key to drive a car. Okay, so that means you allowed them to do with your consent, and something went wrong, they hurt somebody. No, you will be liable for it. Okay, so that's bigger, the parent's liability. The next one is called the joint and several liability. This is, for example, let's say earlier yesterday, I think when I recorded, there was a term called tortfeasor. A tortfeasor is someone who committed a civil wrong, someone who created some trouble for others, okay, caused some damage for others. So there could be more than one person sometimes. So let's say a group of teenagers, they just took a car one Saturday morning and they're just having fun on the highway. Okay, like 5 of them laughing and, just sticking their head out and everything. And so an accident happened. Okay, and some people are badly hurt. Now, the person who is badly hurt, they have the choice. That person has a choice either to go after all the 5 people in the car, or let's say the person already knows one boy who is a son of a very famous surgeon in the town, okay? And then he knows the person who is hurt now that this person, the boy, is the son of a surgeon in a very rich family. So the law allows the person who is now hurt to go after that one person, just that one person, okay? Or they can go after all the people. The law allows the plaintiff to do that. Okay, so in that case, if he goes on after the one person who is the son of the rich surgeon, then that person will be obligated to pay the whole damage, and he can go after his buddies later on. That's up to him. So joint and several liability makes all parties in a suit responsible for damages up to the entire amount awarded. That is, if one party is unable to pay, the other's name must pay more than their share. Okay, they give a little bit of a poor definition in CAPE, but this is a standard concept in liability cases. Okay, in a contract, joint and severally liable means the same thing as joint and several liability. Okay, as it is a big deal, just the same thing as joint and several liability. So that means you can severally means singularly you can be sued within the group and you are supposed to pay the whole amount. You can say, hey, why don't you sue all the 5 of us in the car? No, the law allows the plaintiff to sue one person or 2 people out of the 5. That's called severally, okay, separately. And so, or jointly, all of them can be sued. Okay, so this is a regular concept you want to know. Now, what about the independent contractor liability? So here you hire an independent contractor. So by definition, an independent contractor is independent. Okay, what does it mean? So you don't go and pester him and tell him, oh, you do like this, you do like that, you're not doing this correctly. No, he's an independent contractor. He knows the trade, whether it's a plumber, carpenter, whatever he is, okay, he's an independent contractor. He's not a person you hired and then you're going to tell him exactly what to do. Because the law defines a general contractor, independent contractor, subcontractor, they all have their own definition. So independent contractor, they work on their own. You give them the piece of work, you tell them, look, I want you to wire this whole floor, okay? Just to remove all the old wiring and put new wiring. Leave him alone because he has a certificate as an independent contractor and he's giving you warranty and everything, okay? So how you can get legally liable when you're dealing with an independent contractor? That's what we're dealing with in the slide, okay? When does the owner of a property share in the liability of an independent contractor? Okay, so even though this person is an independent contractor, you hired him, sometimes you could be dragged into the case. Sometimes you could be dragged. You cannot say, hey, you are an independent contractor, so whatever you did, you take the responsibility. I'm not going to be responsible for it because you're independent. No. There are some exceptions you have to know. when you as a owner of the project can also be dragged in, the work being conducted is inherently dangerous. For example, you hire somebody for demolition of an old building, and he says, okay, he's an expert in demolition, and he's an independent contractor. This is what he does for a living. Okay, even though, let's say somebody is hurt when the demolition work is going on, a passerby is hurt or something, you as the owner of the building cannot say, oh, you're an independent contractor, you take responsibility. No, 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 no. Why? Because the work he is doing that you're asking him to do, even though he's an independent, is inherently dangerous. Something could go very wrong, and you cannot put the whole blame on him, even though he's an independent contractor. You have to be reasonable. You can also get into trouble with this because the job you're giving him is inherently, by nature, that's inherently means by nature, it's so dangerous. Okay, you can't just wash your hands off with that. The work creates a public nuisance. Okay, so the demolition, you can use the same demolition example. Okay, so the big building is being brought down with dynamite and everything, and then now it creates a whole lot of dust, and then you're bringing the bulldozer to clear the mess. So it's a public nuisance. There's a noise and the dust and everything. So the public, they do a lawsuit, not just the contractor. They can sue the owner of the building. If it's you, the owner of the building, yeah, you can't say, hey, just sue the independent contractor. No, you own the building. This poor guy is doing your work. He can control all this noise and everything, but you are creating such a public nuisance. You don't have proper protection. You don't want to spend any extra money to control the dust or everything. Okay, so you just in the open, you ask this guy to do this, even though it's independent contractor, we can sue you also. You see how you can be dragged into this mess? The third one, there's a breach of statutory obligation, breaking the law. Okay, so now there is a law in place. Let's go back to the demolition and the public nuisance. So there is a law, there's a city bylaw that if you're going to demolish a building, this is what you need to do. You have to build a scaffolding, and then you have to cover it with this type of material. So it'll be noise proof, dust proof, or sound proof, and all of those things. And then you have to have clearance from the other building, so much of clearance. Okay, and you can only do the work during certain number of hours, not during a rush hour and all of that. What I'm telling you is actually true, especially downtown core. You have all these rules. Okay, you can probably, some of the work can only be done in the nighttime. Okay, so that the traffic is not being hampered. So all those are called bylaws, and there are statutory obligations that as a building owner you have to follow. What if you break those laws? Okay, you can be held liable for it. You can't just say, oh, I left it to the contractor. No, 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 no. You are in it, buddy. You are in it fully. Okay, so you can't just put all the blames and make him as a scapegoat, right? Now, the fourth one, the injury or damage arose out of the use of defective equipment and plant supplied by the owner or tenant. So you as a owner of the building, or maybe you are a tenant in a building, okay, like you're a commercial tenant, and then you engage the independent contractor to do some work. And then you told the independent contractor, you know what, don't bother renting equipment and spend any money because I have some equipment I can give you. You can use it. But the problem is the equipment you gave them, some of them are defective. So the independent contractor has to prove that you knew they were defective. Okay, that's one thing. So anyway, let's assume that it's you knew it was defective, but you just gave it to him, and then that just fell apart. It hurt somebody. You see, whenever I talk about liability, did you notice that I always mention it hurts somebody else? Because the liability is all about a third party. That's why I always say it hurt somebody. It hurt somebody. The children came and they hurt themselves, right? It's always about somebody else, and they're suing you. So if you supplied as a owner of the building, and then you gave them defective equipment, and somebody was hurt because of that, then you can be sued for that. And finally, the owner controlled the manner in which the work is to be done. So even though you hired an independent contractor and he said, you know what, leave me alone, okay, So you already told me what needs to be done. I'll do it. I've done this a million times. Okay, I'll do it. But still, you are just after him every step of the way. You're going and telling him what to do, how to do it. Okay, when to take a break, and all of that. Okay, you're after him, and something goes wrong. When nothing goes wrong, we are okay. We won't even be discussing this. Okay, I won't be spending my time here. When something goes wrong, because you are pushing this guy to do this, move the, let's say he's moving some wood. So no, 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 don't move it like that. You bring it this way, that way. You're telling him everything, and he hurts somebody. Of course, you can be sued too, because if people, there are witnesses that you're just uh, telling this guy what to do, how the work is to be done, then you can be big trouble. Okay, so now go back to the title. When does an owner of a property share in the liability of an independent contractor? Why this is a question? Because independent contractor, by definition, they are responsible for any damage they cause. Okay, that is the normal, because they're independent. They say, leave me alone, I'll do my work. But in this situation, the owner of the building can also get into trouble. Okay, so the liability coverage has 4 coverage sections. Okay, list each and give an indemnity figure provided by most standard policies. Okay, what that means is, when you look at either your homeowner's policy, tenant, or a condo policy, they all have the same coverage: E, F, G, and H. So the coverage E is the one we've been talking so far, the personal liability. It's usually 1 million, and then you can raise to 2 million, 3 million, whatever it is. But usually it's the 1 million you see in all policy. Even if you're a tenant in a building, you're just a tenant, your tenant's policy has 1 million. Okay. So the personal liability is when you as a customer, okay, you get sued by a third party for either causing bodily injury or property damage. We said that all along. Okay. Then if you get sued, the 1 million in your policy will respond. Okay. Then now we're going to see the voluntary medical and voluntary property damage. Okay. So just the definition of the coverage: E, personal liability, 1 million, defense, settlement, the lawyer fees, any court fees, everything will be provided, and the settlement, like the compensation being asked by the other party who is suing your customer. So if the customer wins the case, yeah, the insurance company will pay up to the limit, like 1 million is usually the limit. Settlement and supplementary payments, any other payments related to the lawsuit, form part of the coverage that an insurer agrees to pay on behalf of the insured in a civil action. Okay, that's the purpose of the 1 million. Okay, and so list the expenses covered and provide an example for each. So this is just a short list, and there are more things, but in CAPE, this is the only thing they cover: all expenses which we incur, meaning that for the lawsuit, defense, settlements, supplementary payments, all of that, all costs charged against you, meaning the customer, in any suit insured under coverage E, the 1 million. That means the other party who is hurt because of you, your negligence, they're asking for $200,000. And if the judge agrees to that, then the policy will pay that. And then they also pay on top of that the lawyer fee, the court fee, any kind of defense, supplementary payments, okay, any small payments, that's called supplementary payments, will be included up to the limit of the policy, okay? Also, any interest accruing after the judgment on that part of the judgment which is within the amount of insurance of coverage E. So coverage E amount is 1 million. What interest are we talking about here? Sometimes the party who is being asked to pay the money, the judge is given the verdict, okay? And so let's say your customer is being sued by another person to whom your customer caused bodily injury, okay? So on the other party wins the case against your customer. So your customer now is being asked by the judge to pay him $500,000. So there's amount available on the policy, and the insurance company can do everything. But then you and the insurance company, they work together, and you decide to appeal the case. You're not happy with the judgment. Yes, in a free country, you can go to the appellate court and you can appeal it. So let's say you do that. Your customer does that, okay? So it takes another 6 to 7 months in the appeal court, and they look at the case and everything, and they come back with the same verdict, like the lower court. Okay. Now you're still not happy, and you take it to the provincial superior court, which is the highest court within the province, and you appeal it there. Okay. And they take, let's say, another 6 months. And they finally say, look, we have looked at the case and we cannot come up with anything different than the lower courts. So we agree with the lower court decision. So all this, when all this is happening, you're appealing and appealing, appealing. The poor, the party they're supposed to get $500,000 from you, they are waiting. They are waiting because legally you have a right to appeal. Now let's press it one more step, that even the provincial superior court's decision, you are not happy with it. You take it to the Supreme Court of Canada if they accept your case. And let's say they take another 1 year for them to deal with this case, and they come back and they say, look, we looked at it, we can't do anything different. This has happened before. I'm not just making this up, okay? This is how people have wasted the money and time. Supreme Court says, okay, deal, you just stay with the lower court decision. We can't do anything differently. So let's say that the whole appeal process took 2 years. In some cases, it takes in like 10 years. I can give you cases like that, okay? Let's say two years. So the guy who is waiting there to get your money, because the verdict came out like 2 years ago, so he could have used the money if you gave it to him without appealing and wasting your time, okay? So that's why the legal system say that you have to give him interest. See, now go and see the C here, read the C again. Any interest accruing, accumulating after the judgment. We are talking about the first judgment on that part of the judgment, which is within the amount of insurance, which is, up to 1 million. So now we have to go back and say, so we are so sorry. I know we wasted your time. So here is your $500,000. And the guy says, what? No, if you had given me the $500,000 2 years ago, I would have made so much money. That's why the law says you have to check what is the interest rate on that day. When the last appeal came through and they said, no, give him that thing. So you have to check the interest rate on the day. And there's a rule they have to follow. Insurance company, they know, exactly which interest rate they have to add, and they have to add that. Okay. All right. So D is the premium for appeal bonds recorded in any insured lawsuits involving you and the bonds release. Okay. Before I read all this, I know what they're talking about here. Okay. Sometimes the court will, okay, a case is brought to the court and the judge is doing the preliminary hearing, which we discussed yesterday, the ABC rule. And the judge thinks that, okay, we have a case, okay, and then we can proceed with the case. Now, this case can take a long time, right? Sometimes years or whatever it is, okay? They have to select the jury and everything else. Now, the judge has an idea from the preliminary hearing what the defendant is asking. The judge knows how much they're asking, and the judge has an idea that the defendant may have a case here because the preliminary hearing shows a lot of evidence and witnesses were brought in just for the preliminary hearing, and the judge has a pretty good idea because judges handled this type of case before, for example. So what the judge will do, ask the defendant, who is supposed to have done something wrong to the plaintiff, to bring a bond, okay, for that amount that the plaintiff is asking. Why? Because what if the verdict comes out that yes, the defendant made some mistake and that's why the plaintiff was injured? Then where's the money, right? So the judge in some cases will ask the person to bring a bond, or if they have any land or any kind of asset, the judge will ask them to use the asset as a collateral, okay, for the case. So even when the verdict comes, we have something to fall back on, okay? Because remember, this defendant maybe is not very trustworthy or something like that. This is not in every case the judge is going to ask for an appeal bond or whatever it is, okay? Or a property a property that is being held as security. It's right there, okay, as a security. So this will be also your policy will pay for that, like to get a bond, because you see, your policy will do everything which is within the lawsuit, which is reasonably they're expected to pay, they will pay it. Okay, they're not going to say, oh, you go and get the bond, or you do something different. We're not going to cover that. No, because it's part of the case. Okay. But we are not obligated to apply for and provide these bonds. No, insurance company is not in the business of giving the bond, but they may pay for it. Okay. So the bond is like a guarantee that even when the defendant gets a verdict that he has to pay so much money, and if he's not able to pay, the court system, they're going to call the bond company and they have to come and pay. And that's going to cost money. It's called the surety bond, right? So expenses which you have incurred for emergency medical or surgical treatment. So this could be just like, what we talked about before, the special damages is some money was incurred immediately after the accident. We had to spend some money for the plaintiff who was hurt by your client's mischief. Okay, is dead. So yeah, we're going to include that. Emergency medical or surgical treatment to others following an accident or occurrence insured by this policy. Okay. And so reasonable expenses, including actual loss of income up to 100 per day, which you incur at the request of the insurer. Sometimes your customer may have to take a couple of days off from his work and go and sign some legal documents, some paperwork related to the case. And so he's losing his daily income. Yeah, so the policy will actually pay him that up to 100 per day. Okay. All right. That is coverage E, all the personal liability and what's included there. Now, coverage of voluntary medical payment. I'm going to read the story so it'll make sense. The word voluntary means that you as a customer or the owner of the building, you are not the cause of whatever happened there, but someone was hurt. Someone who was visiting you was hurt, but you cannot be held liable for that. So, but then what you do is you don't say to the person, hey, you should have been more careful. You just take care of yourself. I didn't do anything to cause that injury to you. No, you don't do that. But these are your visitors. So you have, it's only about $5,000. It's not a big deal on the policy. Okay, $5,000 amount you have, you voluntarily call the insurance company, you make a claim. And no deductible would be applicable, and they will look at it and they will pay you. Okay, so let's see the example here. 2 years ago, the Butlers invited neighbors over for a barbecue. So the neighbors are in their home for a barbecue. While playing lawn dart, Bert, who is the host, okay, threw a dart and struck a guest in the face. So he's always a troublemaker. Okay, Bert. So it took 2 operations to repair the bone damage. 2 weeks ago, their friend Peter came to spend the weekend. While going to the table for dinner, Peter stumbled over his own feet and fell, hitting his head on the hardwood floor. Okay, so you can see an ambulance was called and Peter spent the night in the hospital. When released, he was more embarrassed than hurt. So medical expenses incurred by others who are unintentionally hurt by an insured, like the throwing the dart, or who accidentally injured on their premises, like Peter stumbling on his own, nothing to the, Bert, he didn't cause the stumble. He didn't look at Bert and then say, oh my God, something like that. He stumbled. No, that didn't happen. So he stumbled on his own. And then Bert also unintentionally threw the dart and hurt somebody. So both of them, you can call your insurance company and say, hey, I want to explain the situation and say, I want to make a claim on this. Sorry, I was just looking at my email just coming in. Just imagine it, 9 p.m. and the emails keep coming in. With the smartphones, there is no work limit now anymore. The office will send you emails at middle of the night, whenever they're awake. Okay, it's 9 to 5 is no longer the case. It's a thing of the past. 9 to 5. Okay, now you get a email at any time and you feel like answering it. You're so, you can't even ignore it. You say, don't answer, you don't have to, but you're being forced really in your mind to answer. And after this lecture, I'm going to answer that now. Okay, and it's 9 p.m. This is the new normal. Okay, we are like working 24/7, right? All right. So in this type of unintentional things on their own accord, they hurt themselves, yes, you can make a claim. Okay, medical expenses incurred by others who are unintentionally hurt or accidentally, premises are insured by the policy, whether the insurers are liable or not. However, as indicated above, certain coverage limitations will apply. So this is a small coverage. And the same principle with the property damage, coverage G, okay? The property damage is a couple of things. So you unintentionally, a neighbor's window was broken while playing baseball, or, and also the children under the age of 12, okay, if they damage some property, you can actually call your company. So last week, 11-year-old Benji tried out for a community baseball team. He did extremely well at the tryouts and expected to be made team captain. However, the coach's son was given that honor. Wow. Talk about nepotism, huh? Coach's son was given that honor. So circumstances would have it, as you expected, the coach and his family, no, not you expected. This is circumstances that have it. The coach and the family, they live just across the street from the Butlers. So when Benji came home, he completely lost it. He lost his head. He lost his cool. Okay. He was so frustrated that he wasn't selected. He picked up a rock and deliberately threw it through the kitchen window of the coach's home. So he damaged their window. The cost of repair is estimated to be $200. The insuring agreement provides, under the voluntary payment for damage to property, for payment of direct property damage intentionally caused, even though this was intentionally caused by Benji, but then he is 12 years age or under. So that's why I say last week, 11-year-old Benji, even though he intentionally did it, yes, it'll be covered. Okay. And finally, the coverage G is the voluntary payments for residence employee. Who's a residence employee? Someone who lives with you, like a full-time residence employee, like a full-time servant. Okay. So what if she gets hurt while doing some work? Okay. You don't want to just say, hey, you should have been more careful. Okay. So this is your fault. No, there's a coverage under the voluntary payment for residence employee. The only thing you need to remember here, that when you have a permanent employee, she should be listed on your policy as one of the insureds, not a named insured, as one of the insureds. Her name should be on the declarations page, the deck page, the first page of the policy, and there should be an amount of coverage listed for her. That means it should be scheduled with a scheduled amount, okay, for her to be covered, because she's living there as a member of the family, although she's an outsider, and that's why you should list her as one of the insureds on the policy, okay, to be eligible for compensation. And two special limitations and exclusions for bodily injury or property damage. I know there are many, but then in the CABE, they only talk about just two. Watercraft and motorized vehicles. If you did your Rebo, you know that there are some watercraft, the small ones up to certain the length or horsepower. It's usually, I think, about 25 horsepower. It can be added to the homeowner's policy. But then anything more than that, I think that outboard is 25 horsepower, inboard up to 50 horsepower, they accept it. And then if it's a yacht or something like a canoe or something, it shouldn't be more than 26 feet. Okay. So if it's more than that, then you have to buy separate policy. That's why they say two special limitations and exclusions. Okay, watercraft and motorized vehicles, anything more than that, you have to add them separately on the policy. And also insured owns or borrowed from others, and into any property that's damaged when it's owned by yourself, insured customer, no, you make a claim under your property policy, because in this section, we are talking about liability. So the liability that the property that you own, you used it in some way and you hurt somebody else, and now they're going to sue you. Okay, but then the property you own, if something happened or you borrowed from others, it's under your care, custody, and control. Okay, that property destroyed. Okay, then it's, it's not for the liability section to respond. Okay, so any kind of business and business property, there's always a special limit. Most policy that we have, they give you about $2,000. That's it for business property. You know how many people they don't know the special limit? The broker, they don't take the time to explain to them. So some of them, especially after COVID, they're just running their own business in their basement. And they don't have any endorsement, nothing. They think everything they have in their home is covered by the homeowner's policy. No, it's not. So let's say, I'll give you a simple example, an accountant. So during tax time, the accountant, even though it's not like a huge deal, he's only preparing some taxes during tax time, but still is actually generating more exposure to the insurance company, because there could be a lot of people coming and going, from his house. They can slip and fall, they can hurt themselves. And also you could make a mistake in the tax calculation. So he needs actually two different policies, business policy, even an accountant. One is called the commercial general liability policy, the CGL. So the CGL will cover if there's any property damage to third party and bodily injury. The commercial, okay, this is equal to the personal liability policy in a personal line. So you have commercial general liability policy. But then let's say the accountant made a mistake in the calculating the tax, and then it's a commercial account, and the company is losing a lot of money because of the mistake. So the CGL is not going to respond. The CGL is only for property damage and bodily injury. So the accountant needs a special policy called errors and omissions. Okay, like an architect, they need errors and omissions. So a director and officer in a company, director, they need directors and officers coverage. Okay, so the commercial, they have all kinds of different policies. So because of your profession, you made a mistake and the customer is now at a loss and they sue you need special policies. Your personal liability policy is not going to cover everything. Okay, if you're running a business, you need to find out what kind of policy, depending on what kind of business you're running. Okay, now finally, the umbrella liability coverage. Now we can say a lot about umbrella coverage, okay, but here they only just say a few things. So the umbrella liability policy, by definition, will cover everything the customer owns. This is why when somebody wants an umbrella policy, you will see in your training in your company, they would have trained you to send an application to the client. And that application is a very long application, asking so many different questions. For example, if the client owned any property in the US, overseas, some company, they don't want to give umbrella. Because by definition, once you put the umbrella policy on the for coverage, umbrella coverage on the policy of the customer, any property the customer owns, and if something went wrong, okay, let's say one of our customer had a condo in Arizona. He was renting a condo for somebody else. He owned it, okay? And then something went wrong there. Somebody was hurt in that condo, and they sued our customer who owned the condo because they said lack of maintenance. They asked our our customer to do something, and he didn't do it, and that's why the person who came to the condo was hurt. We had to take that lawsuit. There are some companies who will not give an umbrella policy if you have owned any property overseas or in the US. If you are a politician, you are hosting a chat room, you are an author of books, you write a lot of books, you're one of the TV, talking heads, like a commentator or something, you cannot get umbrella policy. Why? Because you may say things and you can be easily sued. You're very susceptible, vulnerable to get sued. Okay. And look at that right now, the Fox News and I think Dominion or something like that. Okay, they're talking millions of dollars. I don't know what the story behind it. I just hate the news. Okay, I just don't want to follow any of these news channels. I'm so tired. And that's one of the reasons I really started the YouTube channel, to spend my time wisely, not to watch the news, because the news, everything is so bad. The news, you get so depressed and what's going on, right? So I'm just, I have an overall idea about what's going on. Okay. I'm not living under a rock. Okay. I shouldn't be, but I don't want to go into, there was a time I used to know the names of every senator in each state. When I was working in GM in Michigan, I may have mentioned this before. I used to take these evening courses in the community colleges. One of the courses I took, a 3-month course, was about the American politics. I want to know, what is this all about? The people are so politicized. They have two parties running the whole country. What is this all about? I spent 3 months learning about the American political system. Okay. So I used to be so involved in it, knowing every senator's name and everything. But then I got so tired of the whole politics, what's going on. I said, I'm going to do something different, right? Anyway, the umbrella will not be available for if you're a politician or a writer or author and things like that. So umbrella liability will respond to some coverages that are not usually included in the primary policy. Your primary policy, they don't include certain coverages. Like a good example could be libel, slander, and defamation. So libel means you wrote something about somebody bad and they're suing you now. Slander, you said something about somebody very bad, defaming their name, okay, so they can sue you. And the defamation, of course, you either said you wrote something, you defame the person. So those lawsuits, there's no coverage under your personal liability policy. But if you have umbrella, yes, they cover those. Okay. So also the main purpose is acts as an excess liability. So let's say you have 1 million, your personal liability coverage, and then you purchase an umbrella for 5 million. So you're being sued for 3 million. So your personal liability will respond with the 1 million, and the rest of the 2 million will come from the umbrella. So that's excess. Okay. I think that's all we have. Yes. All right, my friends. So we are done with this chapter. So probably on the weekend, I'm going to sit down and gather some information for chapter 5, which is the form policy. Okay, form. Okay. And I'll just say goodbye now. And I will see you in my next lecture. Thank you, everyone.